Ian, thrilled to have you here. Congratulations on the Time Magazine thing you're doing off superpower. 3 choices for America's role in the world. What are the choices our politicians have to make?
Well, I mean, it's interesting that right now, despite the fact that Obama's got his top ratings in the last year and a half at about 53%, by far his lowest ratings across the board on foreign policy. And you see it with the 2016 campaign, that the Republicans and Hillary Clinton, to the extent that they're all saying things, they're talking increasingly about the fact that U.S. leadership looks adrift. I do think we have choices.
You and I studied, you did this with your PhD at Stanford, you and I studied a 1960s where presidents talked about foreign policy. JFK talked about foreign policy. It was in every paragraph. Why is it not like that now?
Well, I mean, one reason, the Soviet Union collapsed, and when it did, the United States won the Cold War, and so we said we don't need to do strategy anymore. Our foreign policy has been, well, it's been reactive. If you think about the last 20 years and where the Americans have gotten themselves in trouble, it's been overreacting to things in the absence of strategy. Whether you talk about Ebola, whether you talk about ISIS, whether you talk about 9/11, it's no strategy coming in, something big hits the headlines, and then we all run and spend as much money and time and security and get rid of liberties or whatever it is you want to do to respond to that. And increasingly, given the world on fire, as many of the GOP candidates had talked about, what is it that the new American leader is going to do?
You can say that we're too reactive and lack a strategy, but I sense when I watch people talk in the foreign policy establishment in Washington, I sense that they're still operating in a world where America has unlimited ability to shape the world, and that ability has been severely constrained over the last decade.
It's been constrained in part by Americans themselves. So, I mean, I think there is a question of what we want to do and what we want to stand for.
You say that the constraint is a decision that we've made, a conscious pulling back, and not just a limit of our actual power.
Oh, I think it's both, but I don't believe that America's in decline, and that's not what this book is about. I mean, you know, you look at the investments into the U.S., the dollar, you look at the role of energy, the role of food, the role of technology, the attractiveness of the marketplace that we all talk about every day, and it's hard to argue that America is, you know, is just incapable of driving decisions. It's certainly true that our allies are less interested in supporting us, but there is a question of, you know, do we want to actually destroy ISIS, and what are we prepared to do about it? We just want to talk big. Do we want to really make the Russians pay for their invasion of Ukraine?
So
we'll talk about it.
We'll talk about superpower later, and we'll focus on the Islamic State at the end of the hour. Here's the most important sentence in superpower, which is about Washington right now. Truman, like the elder President Bush, knew when to stop. Douglas MacArthur, like the younger President Bush, did not. We now have a foreign policy, you say, that's almost herky-jerky. We don't know when to say no anymore, do we?
No, I don't think we do. I mean, I think, again, when you're talking about risk aversion, it's all how do we deal with... We're playing tennis in foreign policy. We're trying to hit the ball back. Right? And that works against an 8-year-old. But it doesn't work if you're playing a decent player. And that's the problem. And we've seen that with the decision whether or not we were going to remove Assad or punish him. We saw it. We see it today with ISIS. I mean, this is the question. How hard do we want to go? We're prepared to tell the Iraqi army, you got to take care of this for us. We don't get quick wins. Suddenly we don't have a strategy.
Christine Lagarde says superpower is an insightful and original piece of work. Can the IMF help America, or are they in the way as we develop a new foreign policy?
Oh, I think the IMF's trying to help America. There's no question if you look at the IMF talking about China now and the RMB, the yuan,
yeah, of course,
right, as not being undervalued. The IMF is actually saying we want to inject reality in these conversations. You, the United States, aren't the only player in town. Whether it's Christine Lagarde or whether it's the World Bank players, they're all very concerned that the only country in the world presently with a global strategy is China. And they're building institutions like the Infrastructure Bank, the BRICS Bank, and the rest that are challenging U.S.-led global institutions like the IMF and making them weaker over time. The IMF wants to bring the Chinese in. That's really hard to do in today's environment.
I want to get back to that, but just real quick, we're running out of time in this block. But, you know, you talk about, you know, really making a difference, punishing Assad, really making a difference, punishing Putin for that aggression. But again, we have to talk about the constraint. We are done letting people die abroad for a generation. So if not that, shy of that, what options do we have?
Look, I think there's no question that on foreign policy matters, a president is much less constrained by popular opinion of millennials who don't want to do this stuff and by Congress, no matter what they say. This is a place where a president actually matters. But if you ask me to look at the range of folks that are running today, are they prepared to make the kind of decisions and follow through them, not just wrap themselves in a flag? The answer is no.